YouTube is informing the masses, and the recording is also about to start. All right, there we go. And our live streams are good. All right. So good to see everyone joining in tonight. Those of you joining in on the live streams, if you're catching us at the very beginning, welcome. Today is another professional development seminar that we are hosting through our Poet Artist Development Program. Those of you in the program tonight here joining in on Zoom are, of course, the fortunate ones who have this every month scheduled into the program. And also, as we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to Heidi Wu, who's in the house right now. Heidi, we will be celebrating the release of your chapbook. What's it called? Grow Towards the Sun. We'll be celebrating the release of your chapbook at the LA Times Festival of Books, happening at USC, the University of Southern California. Yeah, big congratulations. It's been a year and a half in the making or so. We also, even though she's not in the house at the moment, officially today, the production files for Dr. Rosie Ramos's chapbook were also sent to the printer, and it will also be making its debut to the public at the LA Times Festival of Books, alongside the third chapbook that is produced through this program called 66 Miles to Paradise from Pomona Valley to the World by our own Gustavo Reyes Ramirez. So, yeah, big deal. 3 chapbooks being released on.
Luis, I don't know if you muted or is it me? Yeah, I think you're muted or somehow.
I think
There you
my
go. You're back.
it came back. Um, yeah, of course I'm getting that internet connection unstable warning, but I was saying, congratulations to the 3 people who have their chapbooks being released this month in, of course, National Poetry Month. That's always a really cool thing to have happen. Yeah, perfect. As Jamie says. So, really big applause for them. I'm really happy and very proud to have their work among the catalog of the ever-growing catalog of DSTL Arts. So it's a big deal. Yeah. And to, kind of hopefully inspire those of you who are, working towards the publication of your own work, whether that be in the program here with us through DSTL Arts, or if you are an individual that is just, watching the live streams or the recording after the fact and, really kind of interested or curious about how to get a creative career going. That is the purpose, of course, of our professional development seminars. And, again, to just introduce us, if you are watching this for the very Arts is a nonprofit arts mentorship organization that inspires, teaches, and hires emerging artists from underserved communities. The acronym in our name stands for Develop Skills and Transcend Limits Through the Arts. And our program
I think we lost you again, Luis.
is audio. You guys are able to hear me again?
Yes, a little
Yeah.
spotty, but it's getting back.
All right. Well, maybe I should just turn off my video since we're looking at the screen anyway. So yes, if you are able to can still hear me, I'm just saying, what DSTL Arts is, and uh, reiterating that we have a variety of programs for people of different ages and abilities. It, of course, includes our Conchas y Café bilingual community writing workshops, which are currently actually looking for submissions. If you want to submit to the current zine, the theme is Through the Lens. It's a combination of photography and poetry workshop. at least for this 15-week cycle, every 15 weeks that we offer it, it does have a different theme and it produces a different zine each time. Obviously a new issue of Conchas y Café zine. Art Block Zine is also currently accepting submissions for anyone out there. The Artistic Zine and Art Block Zine, which zines, where Art Block Zine is the one that specifically focuses on showcasing the talents of LA County based artists, whereas Artistic Zine is specifically for artists who are neurodivergent and who reside within the United States. Um, all of the zines that we currently have, Conchas y Café Zine, Art Block Zine, and Artistic Zine, each one of them has a current open call for submissions. Art Block Zine and Conchas y Café Zine, both of them closed their submissions in the month of May, one at the beginning of May with Conchas y Café Zine, and then Art Block Zine at the end of May. Artistic Zine has an open call for submissions that goes all the way through to July. And then our current Creative Impact anthology, LA Transit, has a deadline for submission also at the end of May. And that one is a sub program of the Poet Artist Development Program, which again, it is celebrating the release of a variety of zines and publications produced by our emerging poet artists in our programs, and this program specifically. The purpose of tonight, though, is, going over publishing contracts and commissions, which is sort of the culmination of this particular series, but there's a lot of different things to consider as you start your career as an emerging artist, as a working artist, I should say. And for that, I wanted to hear from those of you who have been attending these on a monthly basis. What are the key factors that you are currently considering as you plan your career as a working artist? Think about all of the different topics that we've covered up to this point. What have you learned up to now? And what are you currently working on developing as part of your plan? Feel free to raise your hand, drop it in the chat. Getting a third job, according to Angie. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it a third job, just, an addition to your duties with DSTL Arts as our program coordinator. Evan shares that she is working on online presence with a website and social media. Excellent. It's always a good way to start, good place to start. Asking for a raise. Gotcha, Angie. Well, we'll need to talk about that later. But yes, working on that online presence is a good place to start. We did cover that, of course. Jamie added, leveraging as many resources as possible is important, including what you're good at. I'm working on figuring out social media as well, thinking of TikTok. Yeah, if you remember back to our lesson on using social media for self-promotion and marketing, if you are thinking about a platform but haven't done it yet, really assess why that platform is going to work for you. Angie is right. Our particular presence on TikTok is pretty weak. It's not that great, but we can definitely make it better if we really sit down and think about its purpose for our unique programs. Something beyond just me doing backflips very poorly. But yeah.
Because you guys are old.
Sure, Abraham. Anybody else aside from Evan and Jamie thinking about what seeing the world through the lenses? Yeah, that also helps. Don't forget to think about your audience, right? who is really your customer base, because in the end, that's kind of the terminology that people use when talking about their career as a working artist. It might be audience, within the community world, right? But within the business world, it would be your client base or your customers. Who is your audience? Where are they? And what do they need? Right? What services are they looking for that you are able to provide? And as artists, believe me, there's a lot that you can provide to the world. So I guess that, is a good way to check in to see what things you're all thinking about. Remember that a lot of this does come from at least, dedicating a month or two to the full planning process. It's not like you have to have all of these answers right away before you get started as a career artist. These are things that you can develop over time, and they are things that change over time. Just like a lot of the ways that, business has been changing throughout the history of the Industrial Revolution. Now, to sort of help to bring this home a little bit and to help us really understand that things do change over time, we have this quote from the American filmmaker, TV producer, and publicist Ava DuVernay. You might have heard of her. She's a relatively big deal in the film and arts world. She is quoted as saying, all the traditional models for doing things are collapsing, from music to publishing to film. And it's a wide open door for people who are creative to do what they need to do without having institutions block their art. Do you agree with this? What are your thoughts about Ava DuVernay's uh, quote here about traditional ways of doing things? What are your thoughts with regard to the institutions that
The other
exist?
day I was watching this short clip on, the guy from Seinfeld, the bald chubby guy. I forgot his name. Costanza, I guess.
Jason
The,
Alexander, the
yeah.
actor.
So they were asking him like, what's the difference, right? Like what's happening before and now, like in terms of actors. And
Hmm.
he was saying like back then, like even before my career, was like you want to be an actor, you manage to get somebody to get your career going. And he said nowadays, no, that doesn't exist. That's a different thing. Now you have to pull your resources and make the writers write for you or make things happen on your own
Hmm.
because nobody's gonna pick you up. It's like, oh, you look like a good actor. Let me help you be an actor. It's here you have to create your own opportunities.
Hmm.
Especially we were talking about social media and all these things. It's no more of like, let me go to this office and let them beg them for like to help me become the actor or the artist that I want to be. It's more
Hmm.
of a take your own resources or abilities and push it along all the way, which makes it harder because you have to put yourself into many hats.
Hmm.
But that's kind of the state that this remind me of.
Yeah, that's a good point. The world has changed enough where it's not so much about being in the right place at the right time or even looking for people to give you an opportunity. It's kind of more about now you have to create opportunities for yourself, right? That's kind of what I think I'm getting from the reference you're making there, Abraham. Um, Evan added in the chat, I think with the access to self-publishing and grabbing an audience online, this holds true. Also, work is not as influenced by mainstream sales goals. Yeah, a lot of times as artists, we, don't necessarily go for the sales goals model, right? Profitability is not always top of mind. And in some instances, that works really well for us. In other instances, it might not. But that's the beauty of Yeah. Jamie added in the chat also, it reminds me of how people find careers through becoming famous via social media and the fact that institutions are not 100% necessary for success in the arts nowadays. Yeah. Yeah. Social media has definitely changed the way in which our society kind of interacts with art. And yeah, the influencer was not really a job title before, was it? Mojda added expanding to be your only audience to as many as yes. Mojda always speaking um in poetry. I appreciate that. Yes, hopefully you're able to hear me a little bit better. I know my audio seems to have been cutting in and out there. Um, yeah, and Evan's right. More people do have access to art now too. Again, that's probably thanks to social media. Also, institutions have been financially inaccessible historically. Yes, I agree with that, Jamie. Plus racism. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I personally do feel kind of annoyed by the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a buzzword. Um, in practice, it's a good thing. And in practice, it's very important to give us, people of color, a place at the table. I'm sometimes in practice, though, it's not the way that we would interpret equity and inclusion. As people of color, we've been tokenized a lot throughout our lives. Historically, personally, I know I have been in situations where I have felt like I've been tokenized, and that's kind of where the idea of, well, really where DSTL Arts came to exist, right? Because I got tired of being the only brown person in the room trying to advocate for other brown people. Um, in the end, it just made more sense to go against the pre-established institutions and then start my own in a way that was really truly about the community, right? And much more focused on giving the community what the community asked for as part of the planning process, as part of the execution, all of that. So, um, yeah, DEI has sometimes been overused. And Jamie added, yeah, the words have little meaning if you don't actually serve the community within the curriculum. Right. Um, diversity, equity, and inclusion, like I said, is nice on paper, but not everybody understands what it truly means for those of us that have historically not been included. And I think that's the beauty, again, about us not having to always adhere to the existing institutions. You can find our own path. And as we have talked about before, there's obviously a benefit to institutions, but a benefit to, you starting your own career path, right? On your terms, using your particular skills and strengths to establish a way of life that is suitable for you as an individual. So last time we talked a little bit about publishing and self-publishing, specifically the publisher experience and the publisher as an institution. There are certain benefits that you might gain from working with a publisher. You can get things like editorial guidance and copy editing. Obviously, it's important for a publisher, especially a publisher of books, to ensure that things are as accurate as possible. So they'll have usually on hand access to copy editors that will maintain a certain image and level of quality that the publisher expects. They'll try to remove 90, up to 99% of typos and errors. And especially when it comes to things that are fact-based, omissions as well, right? They'll try to remove anything that might damage really the image of the publisher. Publishers also will have, connections within the design world and the shipping and printing world. That's something that, as we discussed before with self-publishing, you would ultimately have to either outsource that to someone, pay someone to do these things or you do them yourself, which can, help your budget grow if you are looking at, getting grants and that kind of thing, but, is also a much larger expense that, if you go the publishing route, the traditional publishing route, you wouldn't have to necessarily pay for. There's also some marketing support that a publisher might give you, but it usually is limited. If you really think about publishers, how often are they publishing books and how much money can they really genuinely spend on promoting your book if you're being published at the same time as, say, like 20 other authors that are part of that same publishing imprint? So, you can get some support there with marketing in terms of basic advertisements and posters, maybe some, uh, priority placement, right, at the doors of a Barnes and Noble where it might be, more visible, as opposed to, say, like in the middle of the stacks with all the other books. Um, in the end, though, book tours, social media ads, and direct sales, they probably are not going to be paid for by the publisher. They're going to be things that you will probably have to arrange yourself as the author. And really, if you're going to be self-publishing, that's kind of what you have to do anyway. So whether you're self-publishing or going the old institutional route, that's something that you would probably need to consider for your own career. Self-publishing, of course, does give you much more creative control. As we talked about before, you would be the one to design your book, to find a cover artist if you're going to pay someone, to design it for you. You can also maybe not focus so much on the sales goals and focus more on the concept of being a designer book or a boutique type of product. It could be something that is more handmade and of a higher quality that could also turn into a higher profit margin. Because in the end, we have to be honest with ourselves. We live within a capitalist world that functions off of the exchange of currency. So, profit, money, all of those things, it's just a tool to get you to the place that you want to be in life. Capitalism isn't bad per se. It's just the way in which people use the tool of money to advance their own agendas. And in your case, your agenda is really going to be your art, right? Think about it that way. Invest in yourself and invest in your work. And that's where self-publishing can really help you, right? Because you can potentially have a higher profit. And if you're producing over a longer period of time, you could potentially have a longer opportunity for income, residual income, to support other projects that you might be working on. And then, just like I said before, some publishers might be able to help you with some marketing, but the reality is they're not going to do much for you by way of marketing. So if you're going to, ultimately pay for your own marketing for your book published by someone else, you could really invest the same amount in publishing for yourself. So uh, things to consider, right? If you're going to go the self-publishing route. And I have touched on this on several occasions during these professional development seminars, but copyright is very, very important. And it's different from trademarks, right? Trademarks protect the use of a company's name, logos, slogans, and products. And it's really about the consumer. It's a way in which, like a logo, for example, will not be allowed to be used for a knockoff brand. If it's going to be used in a way to make the consumer think that it's the legitimate brand and then turn around and, I don't know, sell the consumer a product that is faulty, that's where the trademark infringement will come in, right? It protects the sort of integrity of a brand. Whereas copyright protects you, the artist, the author, the person that is the creator of either artistic, literary, musical, dramatic, and certain other intellectual works. This can include things like curriculum. It can include photographs. It can include certain types of media. Basically, the way that it works is that When you register it with the US Copyright Office, which is linked here in the handout, it will give you, the artist, exclusive rights and ownership over your entire lifetime plus 70 years. And the copyright can be transferred or sold permanently or temporarily based on a contract. So this is really about protecting your ownership of your intellectual property. So that's the difference between copyright and trademark. And really, the only way you can copyright something legitimately is to register it with the US Copyright Office. People have talked about the poor man's copyright, which is where you might mail yourself something and then use that postmark as a way of proving that you created the work. That could kind of work in the sense of, that's when you can prove that it was created, but digital files, they within their metadata will show when and who created the digital file, and what software was used. And then, that's another sort of form of proving ownership, but there is nothing that will hold up in court as well as an official copyright letter from the US Copyright Office. So very important to consider, especially when you think about publishing agreements. There's different ways in which you would encounter this type of document, but this is what our publishing agreement looks like. The DSTL Arts one is a full-on legitimate, I'll call it, publishing agreement. This is what you will be receiving if you complete your chapbook manuscript and you decide to publish it through DSTL Arts. This is obviously the cover page, and it'll show your information. And here at the bottom of the first page, it actually indicates what type of file formats you should be submitting your work in. That is one of the clauses here, and you'll see, right, that it has to be a minimum page count of 25 pages submitted to me either as a Microsoft Word file or a Google Doc file, if you're submitting writing. If you're submitting, say, writing and photographs or illustrations, those photographs or illustrations should be a minimum 300 ppi resolution, and they should be in a JPEG format or a PNG format that's also acceptable if it requires transparencies. And then, of course, if it's a combination, like a children's book or a comic book that requires both text and images, then you need to be clear in your manuscript about where the images go, what placement they have within the body of the manuscript. So, again, you did get access to this particular handout, so you can look at this a little bit more closely if you want. But as we go through, I'm highlighting some of the very specific areas that show you information that is important, such as clause number 2. You, through the signing of this particular publishing agreement, are granting the publisher, DSTL Arts, exclusive rights to print, publish, and distribute, sell, and license the rights to any and all editions and or formats of the book, in whole or in part, in the original manuscript's written language throughout the world. In other words, this is really telling you that, you are licensing DSTL Arts for DSTL Arts is licensing your work for the book, and it can be turned into a variety of formats that ultimately could be sold across the world. And it is for a period of 3 years, as you see here, right? It's for a period of 3 years from the moment that you sign this, and that this also, extends to basically, all different formats that we agreed to when creating your work. You also, in clause 3, are indicating that you have the full rights to the book, that you are ultimately the owner, and that you are not using this as a platform to defame anybody, to steal anybody else's intellectual property, that you're not violating any copyright laws or trademarking, um, registrations. Like you're ultimately saying that you are the artist that created this. You're certifying that you are 100% legit the author. And then goes into a little bit more about the design of the book and the cover in clause 4. And then upon approval of the cover and everything, it will then be sent to print within a week of the final approval. So when I ask you to review your manuscripts, your designs, I am expecting you to look at it as soon as possible and be as thorough as possible. And then again, give me your approval. And before you know it, you will be published. Um, and again, more stuff about like spelling and grammar and how, you are okay with being responsible for handling those things in collaboration with the publisher, with DSTL Arts. Your work will be assigned an ISBN number. This is a single ISBN number for just the print version. This does not include the ISBN number for any kind of electronic versions that might exist for sale to the public. Here's our royalty clause. You get 50% royalty on all copies sold with the payment schedule, which is, quarterly, and then through direct deposit. And you will also receive a breakdown of how many copies were sold during the quarter when a royalty payment is made to you. Also, you get here in this clause 7.1 that you're responsible for paying the taxes. All right. So these are all very important things to see built into a contract for publishing specifically, because there's a lot of different, ways in which a person can, sometimes steal money from you, or, if you don't have, say, a clause that says that, you are able to merchandise your work in other ways, that's obviously going to be a detriment to you. Let's say your book becomes super popular, but the publisher didn't give you a clause like this one that allows you, the author artist, to sell television rights, film rights, merchandising rights, without approval of the publisher. That's something that as a courtesy we give to you, because that means that you can turn around and make, like, I don't know, buttons and t-shirts, and you can make all sorts of other merchandise using your own creative ideas while the book is available through DSTL Arts. You see, if Netflix does approach you, as Abraham is kind of joking in the chat, if Netflix approaches you to adapt your chapbook into a mini series, we don't want to be an obstacle for you. But there are going to be instances where you'll find publishers that'll say, no, you can't do that until 5 years from now, until our contract stops. And who knows if 5 years from now, Netflix is going to still have that offer on the table.
And a quick one, Luis. In our contract says that we have to be in the cameos for the show.
I can neither agree to that nor disagree to that. If you want us in the show, I would not be against it. Package deal. Exactly. Um, so there's a lot more things in here. There's an escape clause. There's a clause in there about, actually checking the accounting if you think there's issues related to the accounting. And then arbitration, and what happens if we disagree in the future and, you feel like we have to go to court. So, really do look at your contracts in the future, because they will have those types of options for you. Whenever possible, go to a lawyer and ask a lawyer to review things like this for you, because you do not want to give up your rights as a creative. Your intellectual property rights are going to be what ultimately helps you make money. And the way in which you use those rights, those intellectual property rights, will determine how, like, successful you are in your own eyes in the future as well. That's why it's good to understand these things that you'll hear from time to time, like licensing, right? Licensing controls four things: the how, the when, the where, and for how long other people can use your artwork. You are the owner of the copyright, especially if are registering it through the copyright office, right? And publishers can only copyright the work that they create. So, for example, as you develop your manuscript through our program, you are creating something that you can copyright and call your own. When you license the manuscript to DSTL Arts through that publishing agreement, you are saying that we have the permission to, for 3 years, offer as a product a book that, as a designer, we can copyright. DSTL Arts can hold the copyright of the book, the object, the designed object. But that's it. We're licensing the material that's inside from you. So, it can be a little confusing, but always remember that in the end, you are licensing the work to us, the publisher. And that is how it should always be. You should always license the work to whoever it is that is going to publish your work in the future. If it's Netflix, you're not selling the rights for your story to Netflix. You should license your rights to Netflix. That way you continue to hold the copyright, and then you can do it again. You can have, like, say, another uh entity like Paramount. They can then license the work 10 years from now, or 25 years from now, or HBO can license the work 50 years from now, and they can reboot the series as they see fit, right? And that becomes, again, another recurring source of income for you by licensing it. Work for hire contracts are different. If you're entering into a work for hire contract, that's going to be usually a short-term kind of thing. It's for commercial work, and you usually will be giving up your intellectual property rights through a work for hire contract. That means that somebody is paying you or commissioning you to create a unique piece of artwork that they then will own. And hopefully, if they're a good person, they'll, give you permission to add it to your portfolio, right? That's always a good thing to ask for. That way you can continue to get work and other commissions in the future. But that's the difference between, licensing something to someone else and then being hired through a work for hire contract. You can also actually engage in work for hire contracts as the employer as well. Yes, Abraham?
I have many of my teachers who were working for Locust Studios or Disney, and
Mhm.
they were showing us some of their work. But some of them, they say, like, we cannot show you because part of our contract doesn't
Yep.
allow us to use it for portfolio until it comes out.
Yep. How many of you have ever wondered why, like, for example, The Nightmare Before Christmas, specifically has Tim Burton's name on everything, right? It's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. It's because he's the one that owns the story. He just licensed it to Disney so that they could, turn it into a movie. So, like, there's little things like that you can just, again, really think about before you engage in any kind of deal with someone. And, again, I'm no lawyer, but I can definitely tell you that, a lawyer will be able to really accurately look at any kind of publishing agreement or licensing agreement and say, this is going to either benefit you or hurt you. And I know enough at least to know that if you are actively submitting your work to the Copyright Office to be copywritten, to be registered, then you are for certain protecting yourself from other people stealing your work. And then you can go the legal route of asking for people to pay you a royalty for using your work if they use it without your permission. Or at the bare minimum, they can stop using it and claiming it as theirs. Also, there's other things you may be aware of, things like the Creative Commons or open source. Sometimes those get thrown around as ways of talking about licensing and ways in which you can share work with others. They have very specific use cases. Creative Commons itself is a nonprofit organization that helps people register works so that they're still given credit as the owner, but will allow you the flexibility, or the consumer will say the flexibility of reusing and remixing your work in a way that still allows for some sort of, again, credit to you as the original author, but kind of like another way of people maybe turning artwork that exists into their own version of that artwork. If you want to learn more about Creative Commons, I definitely recommend you go to the website so you can be properly informed about that and how that can or can, potentially protect you or hurt you in certain situations. And then open source is very specifically related to software and source code. Some people sometimes will call a work of art as kind of like an open source sort of thing, but it really isn't. It's only specific to software and source codes, and how those codes can then be uh, really incorporated into a whole new platform for something that somebody already created. So again, to learn more, visit the website here that's linked in the handout. Here's some potential ways in which you can license your work. Again, always license it, don't sell it. Never sell your rights for anything, because you're ultimately giving up your creative control. But a good way in which you could license your work would be for, film, TV, stage, or sound media. um, Movies, TV shows, plays, music, audiobooks. Digital media could be anything from video games and videograms, videos, to like virtual reality and augmented reality environments, or just elements for those things. Memes, that's also something where you could potentially license your work so that it becomes a meme. Um, I've yet to see that really happen in a way that actually monetizes it for people, but I'm sure there's a way you can make that happen. Print media is almost always going to be a license kind of thing. It could be adapting your chapbook of poetry into a comic, or a pamphlet or broadside. It could be photo prints. There's the master photo, which is usually going to be either a digital negative or a physical negative. So you could license that into a photo print. That's a way to kind of understand that, or maybe adapting it into a coloring book, right? Uh, Pay a subscription to use a meme. That's not a bad idea, Jamie. Just saying. And then yeah, like Abraham said, his his toy, his action figure. He can always license his likeness to become a doll. Or a stuffed animal, right? You could always do a stuffed animal. But there's a lot of different ways in which you can license your intellectual property, especially if you're a visual artist. I feel, you can always print something onto a t-shirt, tote bag, but you could then maybe 3D model it and turn it into a toy. I think that that's kind of cool. Or you could turn it into like a mug or a bowl, or a whole host of other things that people will find useful. But again, that would be licensing, not selling your rights. Now, if you do need to create a work for hire contract, because let's say you are, creating your manuscript, but you don't want to be the one to actually design it, right? You don't want to be the one to design the book. Well, most work for hire contracts are going to have these three things here, right? It'll have the payment terms, and I like to say, whenever you can, pay artists what they're worth. We did talk about, bartering, and if that is something that an artist is open to doing for you, then yeah, of course you can barter. Of course you can take advantage of your relationships with other artists, but as much as possible, really value the people that you work with and pay them. Because whether we like it or not, like I said, It's what makes the world go around. So um, through that process, though, of course, designate how and when you will give them the payments, right? Whether it's one lump sum at the end, or if you're going to do a split payment. That's always really useful, right? We all have to eat, some more than others, and some less than others. Like me, I should really be eating less than others. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm going through this pretty fast.
I think another thing to remind yourselves is like, let's say you hire a painter or illustrator to create your book, and if you wanna create the edition 2 or 3 or whatever, you may have to rewrite your contract and payment, maybe pay again for it. I don't know.
Yeah, that is true. A first edition can be different from a second edition, different enough where some of these payment terms and use terms do need to be revisited, and you will need to pay people again, or modify the contracts so that it covers those secondary uses, right? Um, the use terms are going to really cover the when and the how. So work for hire, again, it's usually a commissioned work, and if you restrict how the commissioned artist is able to use the original work, that could be to your benefit, right? It creates less competition. But it's also, I think, a professional courtesy to allow people to use the work for their own promotional purposes, right? You want to give people a chance to get more work, more commissions based off of their previous commissions. Jamie asks in the chat, how does licensing work for people who co-write something? Is payment between the writers also just split down the middle? I think that type of circumstance, if you're working with like a collaborator, that's something that you should always have in writing, especially when you are talking about like I don't know, like a play, for example. If you're going to produce a play, you could bill both the writers, right? They could be both on the playbill as the writers, but payment wise, that's again going to kind of depend on how you structured your agreement with them. 50-50 is great if they did do 50% of the writing. Um, but again, if they came in as an editor after the fact, maybe you would give them like a 25% sort of equivalent. So it could get a little dicey, right? It's really going to depend on the level of collaboration and how you are structuring your own agreement with them from the get-go as to what their roles are in the collaborative process.
Sometimes names are also wages, like indicators of wage.
Yeah.
Because, for example, if you have a famous writer, somebody's helping you just because the book's going to be sold more because of the famous writer, right?
Hmm.
And for example, there's a lot of artists do their biography, right?
Hmm.
But basically hire a writer to create their bio, and the writers don't get most of the money. It's probably the celebrity, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, or like the case of a ghostwriter, I can almost guarantee you that like Donald Trump did not write his books. He could barely write tweets. So, you know, he more than likely had a ghostwriter writing his book using his voice. And he probably paid the ghostwriter. And the ghostwriter more than likely could not actually come out publicly to say that they were the ghostwriter for at least 10 years or something like that. So there's definitely like ways in which you could give a person credit. Um, but if it's a work for hire sort of situation, then you really need to put those things down in writing, and either pay upfront for the service that they provide, or create some sort of arrangement that says you'll get, I don't know, like 10% of the royalties and I get 40% of the royalties, or something like that. So again, really work with someone, be, I would say, equitable, in the way in which you pay them a rate that is consistent with what, you feel other artists are receiving for this, for a similar service. So yeah, it's all in the contract terms. Exactly, Jamie. Um, and again, be as specific as possible. So when you do create a work for hire contract, add things like design specifications and how you expect things to be delivered to you. Remember the publishing agreement that we just reviewed. Clause number 1 specifically outlines the minimum number of pages, the formats that you are expected to submit your work in, which is either Microsoft Word or a Google Doc. Um, Not napkins, Abraham. Not in this case. But if it's a scanned illustration that was done on a napkin, as long as it's in 300 PPI, then I'm good. Um, so, like those are things to definitely make clear from the beginning, along with the use terms and also the payment terms.
As well as the schedule of things,
Yeah.
especially if you're paying somebody. It's like, okay, we have till these deadlines,
Mhm.
and that will help you if the person became a lazy person or something
Right.
happens, right? You might want to
Right.
recover yourself, like in terms of time, because you don't want to work to be turned in 2 years later.
Exactly. Exactly. So, to help you in the event that you might need to use a work for hire contract, I have provided for you as part of the packet here a sample work for hire contract. This was taken from a legitimate legal services website that also offered this as a contract, and I made my own modifications to better reflect us as artists. So you'll see here, it looks like a letter ultimately with your name information at the top and then the contracted artist name information there. And then everywhere where it says insert your name here or insert the artist name, and all of that information can be modified as necessary. But remember, these are the big things that we were just talking about. Um, you know, they are, at least with this version, they're ultimately certifying that they're not using software that could be generally called AI, right? Artificial intelligence to create the work. They are the original artist that is, not creating work that is infringing upon the copyright of any other person. You're also right here outlining that the work will be delivered on X date, right? So you're giving them a deadline. That's very important, as Abraham said, and it should be following whatever specifications you outline. So, add that right here according to the following specifications, and then you can obviously reference the specs that I will be referencing when I ask for your manuscripts in the future. That could potentially help. Of course, that depends on your particular needs, but we are obviously focusing on the types of things that we do through Distill Arts. And then, here's again, right, the cost, the commission rate. And so this is how much money you expect to pay them. The payment schedule. So you might want to do like 25% upfront and then 75% at the very end, or 50-50, however, if you feel comfortable. And then right here, this is work for hire agreement and the effective purchase of the complete rights assigned to the work. So that means that you are buying the work and all of the rights associated. And again, the artist will only have the right to use samples of the commissioned artwork as part of their promotional or marketing activities for their services, with no commercial gains to be made beyond those through the use of promotional work. So you want to allow people to make money off of their work if you're hiring them, if you're commissioning them, just not directly competing with you for the work that they created. In other words, they can't take the work that they created for you, turn around and use your logos to turn it into a poster, right? That is like a we'll call it like a knockoff poster. of your particular intellectual property. So, yeah, feel free to reference this if you yourself find the need to create a work for hire contract. Now, did bring up lawyers a couple of times. In the end, it's going to depend on whether or not you find yourself in a position where large amounts of money are going to be exchanged, right? That's when you should really consider getting yourself a lawyer and legal representation to review your contracts and to review any kind of agreements that you're entering into, licensing or otherwise. But sometimes there's other types of people that you might need. And those other types of people could be things like agents or, even union representation. They offer different things, but they can both provide things like professional connections and opportunities. Like I write right here, talent representation usually means an agent sells your skills, talent, or art on your behalf. So if you do decide to go with an agent, that's sort of their purpose. They are on your behalf advocating for people to hire you. Whereas a union is going to represent you when you have been hired. They're going to give you opportunities to network with other people and other employment opportunities that will ensure equitable pay. But that's something that usually takes care of you after you have been hired, after you have actually gotten a job or a gig in any kind of environment where that applies. They can also help you to kind of review contracts and help you negotiate contracts. Agents, they are intermediaries, and as their client, you are going to want someone to advocate for you in a way that gets you to earn a little bit more, because in the end, the agent's incentive is to get you the best deal possible so that their 10 to 15% commission is bigger. That's how they get paid. They get paid when you get paid. That's also a red flag to consider. If they are asking you to pay them first and then they might get you a gig, that's probably not a legitimate or even an agent with strong ethical practices. So, don't feel like you have to pay for representation. That only applies for unions. You pay a union fee and then you get the representation because of that. But in the case of an agent, their incentive is to get you the best deal so that their commission, that 10 to 15% commission, is bigger. Both of them might give you some advice, but it's usually not going to be legal. Explicitly legal advice. Agents are not attorneys. Only a certified attorney can give you any kind of real legal advice. The nice thing about a union, though, is that if you are paying your union fees, some unions will have actual attorneys uh, on retainer who can help you and give you legitimate legal advice. And then, of course, there's also connections with specialists. Agents might work with certain kinds of specialists to help you with branding, to help you maintain your public image, or even act as editors, but they'll usually refer you to other specialists that do that as part of their job. And the same generally goes with unions, especially unions for working artists. They have usually deals with other agencies that can connect you with, marketing specialists and branding, and even people that can help you maintain a public image. If you're going to look for an agent, if that is the path that you want to consider, definitely do your research. Don't just, go for the first person. Think about what other properties they've sold and to who. That might mean that they, might understand your work better if they've sold other properties that are similar to yours to, other publishers or, media companies, that kind of thing. which goes back to, who else are they representing? If it's a person that really does not understand what it's like to be Latino, because they have no other Latino artists under their representation pool, then, they might not really know how to market you. They might not really understand your background and, what you bring to the table. So it does help to look at who else they represent. Also, think about the type of contractual obligations that you might enter into when you sign an agreement with them on for representation. You don't want to be scammed, that's for sure. Um, that's I guess a good question to ask when you're interviewing an agent. What's the best taco place to represent me? Uh, that's a good one, Abraham. But yeah, beware if they are requiring you to have exclusivity contracts where you only get to work with them. Not all agents are specialists in things like video games. They're not all specialists in audio formats. And, if it's a literary agent, they should probably not, keep you from expanding into those other media fields. But if their contract says that they can only work with you, that may be good, that may not be so good. That's kind of up to you for you to decide. If you want to learn more about the function of an agent, specifically a literary agent, I definitely recommend you visit this website from Poets and Writers. Poets and Writers is a very uh, esteemed and legitimate magazine that has existed for decades. Um, this is off of their blog, and it does explain a little bit more of the function of a literary agent. And they also have a listing of different literary agents and what type of work those literary agents usually will represent. It's also worth noting, though, that poetry books themselves are not considered very uh, high earning, and so most agents will not represent poets. But if you are a poet and you also write short stories or long form prose like novels, screenplays, those will obviously get you somebody, get somebody to look at you, right? Because those will potentially earn more money for them in the long run. But yeah, unfortunately, people like me as a poet will have a very hard time finding a literary agent. Any questions so far? No? All right. Well, we'll continue on. And of course, to just touch on unions a little bit more, unions are about leveraging collective strength. Um, I mean, we don't need to go into the whole history of it, but some things to think about when looking at potential unions to join as artists, specifically as writers. There's different benefits to them. Things that might include a minimum salary requirement, protection of your intellectual property and residuals if you are writing for TV or for film. Um, that also could include things like health insurance and discounts on different forms of insurance, such as general liability insurance for your business or discount on your homeowner's insurance. It could even include things like pensions, right? They have different types of benefits that they offer to their members who are paying their union dues. Some of them do have eligibility requirements. Some of them require a minimum number of publishing credits before you can become a member, and some of them don't. Um, and of course, there's always the cost, right? Union dues and membership have different structures, different fee structures. Some of them don't charge you for, I don't know, a couple of months until you are finally able to pay. You just really want to make sure that you do your research and really understand the benefits that you're getting if you do join a union and whether or not they're benefits that will help you in your career. But generally speaking, unions are great. I'm definitely pro union. And if you can afford it, go for one. because there's at least a couple that in our little limited research that we did, and in researching this particular slide show, we can say these are pretty good. There's the National Writers Union, and we do have the website up here. They cover writers working in pretty much all media, including freelance and employed professionals, which is nice. Um, and then there's different ways in which they classify employed professionals, so you may not have to necessarily be a screenwriter, but you could be a playwright, you can be a poet, which is always nice. You could be a person that's writing for just web content. If you're a translator, you would definitely be eligible. They offer things like medical, dental, vision insurance options, and assistance if you can't afford it. If you are a journalist, obviously you can benefit from a press pass. There's also legal and career advice that they can give you, plus this one, contract grievance assistance. So, if you enter into a contract, a licensing agreement with someone, or a work for hire contract, and they don't pay you, this particular union will make sure that you have the legal support you need in order to, file any kind of lawsuit that you may need to. They do have monthly dues, but their dues are on a sliding scale structure. So you could pay as low as $12.50 a month. Basically, just a really, really customized Starbucks coffee, and you could probably afford it a month. Easy with that, Abraham. Ain't no leg breaking going on here. There's also the Authors Guild, which is open to traditionally published authors and illustrators with at least one published book, and also self-published authors who, as you can see here, earned less than $5,000 in the past 18 months, and freelance writers who have published 3 or more pieces or made less $5,000 or less in the past 18 months. So this one, the eligibility is also a little bit more open. Very similar benefits as the last one. And they have also the regular membership at $135 a year or $12 a month. So it's a little bit cheaper. And these also have, this union also has one specifically for emerging writers. So you don't get the full benefits of the full, eligibility pool, but this is for unpublished writers only. And it's $100 a year or $9 a month as of this recording, or at least when we did the research. Those union dues may or may not have changed in the past year, but we at least have a couple of unions there for you to look into. Now, there is a difference between a union and a membership organization or a trade organization. These are also valuable. They're also really good for expanding your network, but these are not going to be the same thing as a union. These are really about your professional development and making, your network larger. So an example is something like the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the people that put on the Oscars. They are a membership organization. They are not a union. And of course, if you're a member, you do get some benefits in terms of like, pathways for emerging filmmakers, actors, writers, and more. And then membership in this organization also means that you could be nominated for an award through the Oscars, right? So there's a benefit to it there. But then there's also things like the Academy of American Poets, which again, this is more about expanding your network, not so much about, really, I guess, getting any jobs through this, although you could potentially get some publishing opportunities that might not come to you otherwise. It just builds your visibility in the poetry world at the national level. And then your dues also pay for programs such as like the Poem a Day newsletter or all of the different activities that happen around the month of April, National Poetry Month. Locally, locally you have the Arts for LA, and Arts for LA is more of an advocacy organization. They are going to kind of really work more in, I would say, the arts education sphere. They tend to advocate more in that area. But they do also have initiatives that, help people with like mentorship and getting larger amounts of funding for grants that support arts programs in the community. So, they're more structured in that way. But again, it's really about your professional development if you're going to go for a membership or a trade organization membership, uh, either way. And then again, it's always worth to remember that whether you join a union or you have an agent, it really comes down to having a network of like-minded artists with whom you can share ideas, resources, and more. The more that we as an organization do these types of workshops, and the more that we work with you, the more we see the true value of working in community with community. um, because in the end, we really do have to rely on the sort of bonds that we create with one another. The social bonds really have I think, very valuable place in our society, and more so for us as artists, because we have to start somewhere, and a lot of times we do start with that mentality of the starving artist, but it's not about living in that mentality all the time. It's about being in a mindset, in a place where you understand your value, and no one is going to understand your value like other people who are working in the same field as you. So again, whether you are joining a union, self-publishing, whatever path your career takes, just always remember to have a network, have your own little arts fam like we have here. And remember that we're always here to support you as you develop as an artist. So with that, I'll leave you with our little bit of homework here, which is really to look at the slide deck. Really look at the things that we covered today, especially those sample contracts and agreements, because those are going to be things that will help you approach future agreements, future licensing agreements and contracts. If you can understand them now, you're going to be better prepared in the future when you start to actually get these things presented to you from people outside of our little community here. And with that, if anyone that is watching on the live streams or later on YouTube, you can always visit our website. You can always follow us on social media for other workshops and additional updates that we might have. Um, and we are again here for you too. Just because you're not enrolled in the program at this time doesn't mean that you can't still benefit from some of these resources. And for that, we do make ourselves available. You can always email us directly or visit our website, shoot us a message, and we're more than happy to answer questions that you might have. So with that, stop sharing my screen, and we'll, I guess, open it for questions. If anyone here on Zoom currently has a question, I'm more than happy to answer for you. I know I covered a lot, but feel free to raise your hands if you do have any questions, or just unmute. Either way works. Well, if you don't have any questions now, that's fine. You can always, yeah, you can always take the time to digest it. Um, I will have our, debriefing office hours, like I've been calling it, 2 weeks from tonight. Sorry, 2 weeks from tomorrow night. So, you'll have an opportunity then to, just ask questions, or from now to then, you can always send us an email. Any questions that you have, especially when it comes to the publishing agreement that we could potentially offer you through this program. We're more than happy to work with you in understanding some of the details there. Um, Otherwise, I think we'll call it a night. For those of you joining on the live streams, welcome once again to the world of Distill Arts and our poet artist development program. It's been a pleasure having you join us tonight. The recording of this will go live in a couple of days on our YouTube channel. If in case anybody did miss the beginning of the live stream, but for the most part, again, we're here to answer questions as they come up. And for those of you in the mentorship program now, this is the last of the professional development seminars in this particular program year. So I really hope that you feel, better aware of what to look for and how to approach things as you develop your career as an artist. And we're really just going to spend the rest of the current program year focused on developing your manuscripts and getting you ready to celebrate the release of your chapbooks in the coming months. So thanks again, everyone, for joining in. I hope you all have a great night. Um, and yeah, we'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody. See you later.